2 weeks ago, feels like a month ago, we began this study, and it was Stewards of God's Creation. And we should be able to finish it tonight, Stewards of God's Creation, and then next week we'll move on to a new focus. But as we think about being stewards of God's creation, really what we're discussing is a biblical application of environmentalism. Okay? Biblical application of this as we consider and think about what the Bible has to say about things like climate change and environmental issues. It's a big deal in our world today, isn't it? I mean, it really is. And how many of you heard of the Green New Deal? Right? It's a major political statement by some politicians in our country today that many are behind, but then also many vehemently oppose. And it's a big situation that's been going back and forth for a while. So we looked at some of those things last week. But specifically, we looked at Genesis chapter 1 and the concept of dominion, where God has given dominion over the earth to us, to humans, for us to use. And so that was a big deal. We watched a video about that. And I want to take some time now, right at the beginning, to do a worksheet together. Okay? To do a worksheet. And I want to ask you this. Have you ever talked to someone who is confused about the responsibility that we have to worship the Creator rather than the creation? Okay? Have you ever talked to somebody like that who just doesn't quite understand how God designed our world to work? Okay? And at times, I believe there are pagan ideas that creep into our Western culture. And so on this worksheet, which if I could have a couple of you gentlemen pass out for me, and one to each person. On this worksheet, you're going to find 4 scenarios and 4 Bible passages. Okay? 4 scenarios and 4 Bible passages. So, here's what I want you to do. I want you to read each scenario with your group and decide which of the biblical principles for the 4 passages you could use to correct the thinking of these individuals, okay? So, here's what I want you to do, okay? How about we have you 4 be one group, okay? And then Joe and Lisa, maybe you could help these girls here. And then you guys can be together. And so here's how it's going to work, though, okay? If you're on this side, I want you to do 1 and 3. Does that make sense? 1 and 3. If you're on this side, I want you to do 2 and 4. Okay? And so I apologize to our Facebook Live viewers. It'll be a little bit of dead air here while we work on this. And so go ahead and do this. We'll take, I don't know, about 5 to 10 minutes. And I want you to dig down deep, look up the scriptures. I want you to discuss it. I want you to come up with options and ideas. And we'll reconvene in 5 or 10 minutes. And we will discuss this and try to come to some conclusions. All right, so go ahead.
Would you like me to open that for you?
It was me. Well, we both had to open it. But I opened mine and they
I swear you were just crushing the popper inside.
So we're doing 2 and 4, right? All right.
1 and 3, I thought.
What?
Oh my, Camden! Clearly not.
All right. So 2 is a kooky teacher who wants to worship the earth.
Friend from down the street invites you to go fishing with him and his dad in a new boat.
Don't read out loud. That's just annoying.
Okay, so I don't even know what we're doing. We have to figure out which of these passages goes with 2 and 4.
Now you're stealing fish. The government.
Oh no!
I will work on 4 for now.
So what are we just looking these up to see how they apply?
Yeah, 3 Exodus 21.
Okay. A friend from down the street.
Okay, it's not. Yeah, I'm guessing the Exodus one is.
Your Bible. What? It goes from here to here.
So.
I hate study Bibles. Oh no, I need to just get a smaller Bible.
Dude, this one. This one is Exodus 20.
Okay.
Exactly.
Oops, I didn't mean to do that.
Starting Exodus 21 through 7.
I have nothing to write in.
It's number 2.
I'm
The Philippian one is definitely not for number 4. So I will try Romans 1:18.
Multiple usage.
That would be stupid. Why are there 4 possible answers and then one of them doesn't even?
How we doing, guys? So what do you have? 2 and 4?
Yeah, we're doing 4 and they're doing 2.
Oh,
Oh, okay. Okay, but
No, I don't. Definitely don't got that.
Secret compartment.
Okay.
I think Romans 1:18 is number 4, but I'm not positive.
Can you like flip the
how we doing, guys? 2 and 4?
We got 2.
You guys got it? Okay. I need more than just the verse, though. I need you to write down.
Commandments pretty much applied.
How would you apply that verse?
I think. Can you look at that Romans 1:18
Oh no, I
with
don't
number
think
4?
that's the right line. I mean, like it applies, but it doesn't answer the question.
Yeah, but it applies like right because it applies to all of them. Like thou shalt not steal. You can pretty
I
much
think it's
apply
the
to
Romans
this. Indeed. Let's go.
Why not?
Wait, we're putting Exodus 20 down for that one?
For both of them.
It's Exodus 20.
Guys, that's not what you're supposed to do.
Put down other ones too. We're just being thorough.
For God has
Thou shalt not steal. Okay, that completely applies to this.
So does thou shalt not kill.
Like fish.
It's not even.
Okay,
never
when
mind.
the-
Thou shalt not steal isn't even in the passage. Verse 15.
Guys,
Lucas, why are you looking anything up?
Look something up. Look up Rome.
I think Romans 1:18 is number 4. That's my idea.
Your idea is terrible.
It's literally for the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness
What?
and unrighteousness of men.
No.
For the truth of unrighteousness.
Are you kidding me? Harsher than a fish.
What do you think then?
Subject into the higher powers.
Oh, maybe number 3 is Romans 1:18. For
I think it's
throwing
Philippians.
trash out the window all the time. This is so.
Is this still running right now? So they
Oh no! Nobody's watching.
let's try Philippians.
This one's pretty harsh too, but I'm.
1:18 is super harsh for 2 or 4.
So is 13.
I'm looking at the Philippians.
Super harsh.
You catch a guy stealing extra fish, for the wrath of God is revealed against all ungodliness. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna put Romans 1:18
What
for
is
number 4.
Philippians?
I see something in Philippians 2:4.
He can't be using Philippians.
I'm not sure if that's what he.
You're wrong, Grandpa.
Yeah. All these passages are kind
I
of
don't know where
vague.
Philippians is. I'm just-
Philippians 2 is definitely not number 4.
How do you know?
Because I read it already, and it has nothing to do with it.
This might be it.
Not even like the wrath of God.
These
It's
are
an
way.
introduction? What is wrong with your Bible?
It's terrible. And
It's a study Bible.
That is a big... Okay, what's Romans 13? I haven't looked at that one yet.
We just looked at that one.
Alright, this doesn't make any
Oh.
sense even. None of this makes sense. I don't understand.
Oh, I think number 3 is Romans 13, guys.
We're not supposed to be looking at
Well, we might as well do all of them if we're so hopeless.
Yeah, I think 4 might be 3.
I have no idea
But it says
what
that nothing
Philippians
down
2
to the glory
applies
of
to
the righteousness
because it
divine
doesn't seem to apply to any of it.
What's that?
I'm pretty sure.
Look not every man on his own things, but every man
Number 2, one of your teachers. It's quite involved in
following all that God
recycling. What?
has.
Yell at the recycling.
No, she goes on the fathers of recycling. She's kooky.
The Philippians one just kind of makes sense.
Honor Mother
The
Earth.
Philippians one kind of.
Mother
But it says,
For the sins committed.
how could you respond to showing your commitment to following all God
I have no idea what 4 is. I
have
have
no
no
idea.
anything.
I think number 4 is 118. I know it's kind of harsh, but still.
He has an answer sheet up here.
13 is the same way. It's like, thank God, children.
But this is talking about following God.
No. For people,
That's what
okay.
He's
Let every soul be subject unto higher powers. You confront him on this practice.
going
Guys, look, it's super obvious. Oh my.
Yeah, I don't know that.
Wait.
and
David,
that's
look.
why maybe I'm
Okay,
thinking it was
so
Exodus.
this is disrespectful to other and not showing honor to God. Let every soul be subject unto the higher powers. That's what number 3 is. That's what Romans.
Okay,
13
put it
is.
down then so that at least we know.
That one's the only easy one.
Thou shalt not
That's what we're not doing.
Well, We can write it down.
This is like sadistic.
Okay, so we've cleared that one out for sure. Don't have to worry about Roman.
Flipping to Roman.
Never mind. Definitely. Never mind.
I don't know what you're talking about. It's confusing me.
No, never mind. One is Exodus. One has to be Exodus, so never mind.
Dude, this.
Spirit animals.
But it's
One, yeah.
I know.
Okay, wait. Exodus 20.
It goes into
Well,
what
it can't be Exodus because one has to be Exodus. No.
I'm looking at number 1, guys, just so we can.
I feel like I'm missing a page.
So Romans 13.
Thou shalt have no other gods before me. They're worshiping the animals in verse 1, or the number 1.
Okay, so they're
Yeah,
worshiping
good job.
the earth in number 2.
No, they're not. They're just trying to conserve it.
Mother Earth has to be.
They're worse sins committed
Romans
against the
13.
Mother Earth.
Okay, so fine. Exodus 20 is number 2.
I know.
Then what would number 1 be?
These creatures too.
I don't
We do like all the other ones.
Maybe Philippians 2 has something to do with that.
No, Philippians 2 is just confusing.
Okay,
It
well,
doesn't apply to anything.
Philippians 2, 3 through 7. We're done through strife or vainglory. What?
Yes, it has to be Philippians because 3 is definitely.
This should not be this.
All
hard.
things for every man.
It has to be
of
Philippians.
others.
Wait, wait,
say that.
and change the glory of the incorruptible God into an image made like.
All right, one more minute.
That's number 1. Read verse
Then we
3.
will.
It says,
Of the 1?
and change the glory of the incorruptible God into an image made like the corruptible man,
Okay,
the
why do
birds,
you
the
guys
four-footed
think
beasts, and
it's
creeping
Oh,
things. That sounds like number 1.
that
so
sounds
can't
like
be
number
number
one.
4.
Okay.
Let me just find Philippians.
Maybe,
Yes, good
maybe
idea. Okay,
because
here you go.
maybe I'm going back to Philippians.
What did you guys
I have no idea what Philippians is. That's like impossible.
say?
Guys, you have a 50-50 shot if you know what the other two are. What you did?
Yeah, we happen to know 1 and 3, but we don't know the others, so.
No, we know 2, sorta.
Okay, which means
I
that.
tried to
You'll
do
be
that.
super embarrassed.
Okay, so Exodus. Okay.
Because there's 4 is like.
So, which means Philippians has to be number 4 then.
Yeah, I think you're right. But the second one, the only one that
The,
can fit
like,
Roman
what?
numeral. The fourth one is kind
It's
of...
okay, just do it. I'm sure
Like,
we'll.
the first part sorta connects to number 4, but the second part, like,
The second one, I think.
it doesn't make any sense.
Well, maybe they just put the extra verses in there to confuse
That's
us.
what I thought was the second one. I think Romans 1. I know. We all could. Or probably all.
We are probably all wrong.
All right. Let's reconvene here, and we will look at these scenarios and situations. So the reality is that, as we discussed last time, God called us to subdue the earth, right? God commanded man to have dominion over his creation, but we need to be careful how we fulfill that command. All right, so look at this. You know how we often talk about there's a ditch on either side of the road? This sort of talks about the ditch on either side of the road. Here's the road where we need to be. And there's one ditch that some of the people in our scenarios fall into. Well, they're worshiping the creation. Okay, that's certainly wrong, to worship the creation more than the Creator. It makes no sense. Okay? But then there's also the other side of the road, the ditch on the other side of the road, which is exploiting and neglecting the creation. That's also wrong. That also has very long-lasting consequences. And so those are sort of the ditch on either side of the road that we're facing here. So let's look at scenario number 1. And so who was working with scenario number 1? Was it this side? All right. What verse did you choose?
Stress.
Oh my.
Oh dear.
We happen to use all the verses.
Yeah, we do use that.
That's all right. Well, which one? Name one that you. There's really not like a major wrong answer here. All right, we're just looking for some discussion. Some answers are definitely better than others. But what was one of the verses that you used, Dwayne?
Exodus 20, verse 3 through 3 and 4. Thou shalt not have any other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image or any likeness of anything that's heaven or in the earth. And thou shalt, in verse 5, and thou shalt not bow down to them or serve them. And it seems like that's what they're doing.
Okay, so you looked at Exodus 20 about not having any other gods before the one true God, before Jehovah. And so that's interesting there. I mean, we can see how that would apply in many ways, that if all of a sudden you're praying to creatures, right, and instead of God, then we've gone in the wrong direction. Okay, so that's one. Somebody else another verse, Mom?
Romans 1:25. They changed the truth of God into a lie and worship and serve the creature creation more than the Creator.
Very good. And I would probably say that's very specifically what's going on here, isn't it? I mean, you look at the previous verses that were listed there where it talks about change the glory of the uncorruptible God into an image, things like that, not being thankful for God, and then here they are, they're worshiping the creation more than the Creator. And hey, there's nothing wrong with trying to enjoy God's creation. And I appreciate your creativity there, Mom, because verse 25 is not even listed on the sheet, but it seems like that is more specifically what's going on here. And so, way to be creative. I appreciate that.
You just messed
And
up.
listen, there's nothing. It's my fault. There's nothing wrong with enjoying the creation, right? I mean, if you enjoy. Bird watching or shooting deer or whatever it is you like
He's
to
not
do.
worshiping.
I've often said
Dead deer.
the beauty of the earth is never better than on a golf course. I think earth is never more beautiful than on a golf course. And nothing wrong with enjoying that, but clearly this neighbor is going off track a little bit, aren't they? I mean, when all of a sudden they're praying to them and they're speaking of the spirits of the animals and trees and things like that. They've gone on track, probably in a very Romans 1 type of way. Okay? So, who would like to talk about scenario number 2 on this side? Joseph, yes, sir.
That was us, so
Okay?
I guess I'll take it, but it's probably wrong because if we chose the same one, we chose Romans 1, verse 23 for that.
Okay, read it for us.
And change the glory of the incorruptible God into an image made like corruptible man, and to birds and four-footed beasts and creeping things.
Okay. Very good. And so elaborate a little bit. How would that apply to scenario 2, which sort of dealt with recycling, which is a great thing, but then the teacher specifically mentions that we need to honor Mother Earth so that the planet can be in harmony with the universe. Talks about planting trees specifically to make up for the sins that the school has committed against our mother, that type of thing. And so how would you use that verse to perhaps apply and help her?
Well,
with this?
they said to write a story, so I just wrote a quick thing here. It says, me talking to her, have you considered that there's someone who has made the earth and made the sun and made the trees? You know, you can read from the Bibles from Romans 1, that sometimes people get confused about, what's worthy to be praised, because without God there wouldn't be these things that you're worshiping.
Okay, very good. Yeah, pointing to a creator, someone who created all of those things. And that's very good. And I do think that the second scenario, there is certainly an indication there that there is some almost idolatry, isn't there? When you're dealing with Mother Earth and trying to make up for sins that you have committed against Mother Earth and that, well, then you're not worshiping the one true God. You're worshiping Mother Earth instead. And I think that would certainly then apply over to Exodus 20, wouldn't it? That, not having other gods above Jehovah, not, worshiping no other gods. And all of a sudden, in this situation, it seems that they're worshiping Mother Earth and doing what they can for Mother Earth so the planet can be in harmony with the universe, which is, it's just paganism. It really is. And maybe it's not as overt as it once was when you're bowing down before an idol and sacrificing to an idol, but it's the same thing, just repackaged in a 21st century wrapping. And so that's a mess for sure. Okay? So that's good. Yes, another comment on that?
Yeah, that reminds me of Earth Day on April 22nd every year. That's exactly what they do. They worship creation, the Creator.
Okay. And I'm not too familiar with all the ideology behind that. I'm sure some of it is well-meaning, but some of it really does tend, because you look at this, and it starts out by saying a teacher is involved in recycling every scrap of paper and every soda can. They're trying to evaluate energy efficiency. I mean, is any of that sinful? Is it sinful to recycle? Is it bad to be as energy efficient as you can? There's nothing wrong with that. But then it trends in a way, and all of a sudden it turns into paganism and idolatry. And so I think probably Earth Day, it probably goes along with that. There are many good things about it, but then there's a lot of it that does tend towards this Mother Earth type of aspect, which is, it's just paganism. So, all right, good thought. All right, let's go on to number 3. And so we're back to this side. Number 3. And so your best friend has developed a habit of tossing trash out of the car as he's driving down the road. And so it's funny, I remember years ago, a friend of mine, he was in my wedding, we were very close, and we were driving down the road, and he had just gotten this new car, and it had a sunroof. And we had some snacks, and he just threw it out the sunroof. And I was like, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, it's just my garbage can. You know, and he just threw it out the sunroof. I'm like, what is going on? But I did not share Bible truth with him at the time. Maybe I should have. And shame on me. And so, help me out here, okay? What biblical truth, if I could have group 1 over here, apply? Yes, sir. Now,
let me mention what I focused on was over in Philippians, and that's what we look at. In verse 4 it says, look not every man on his own things, but every man also on the things of others.
So Philippians chapter 2 is what
right.
you're looking at.
And that's verse 4.
Very good.
But then also, in verse 5, it talks about Jesus, and he was made in the form of a servant, and that he was made in the likeness of men, and he humbled himself. And a thought I had is, would Jesus trash the planet that he made? And that's one thing that we could tell a friend. I mean, he made this planet. And if you were walking with Jesus or taking a drive with Jesus,
sure,
in your car with a sunroof, and Jesus is behind the wheel, would you throw out a candy wrapper?
He probably would not. And so that's excellent. You know, there is a tendency to take it easy on that stuff. You know, if you're driving on the highway at 70 miles an hour and you throw something out your sunroof, nothing probably will ever happen to you, right? And nobody's ever going to know. Who's going to care? Do you think someone behind you, who maybe the one person who sees it, is going to call the cops and somehow figure it out? And, you'll probably get away with it 100%. And so there's a tendency to do stuff sometimes where it's like, it doesn't matter. And but I appreciate that verse there of just let each esteem others better than themselves. Don't look on our own things, but look on the things of others. And being respectful. We do not know how long the Lord will last. We have to use our resources in a responsible way. That's, again, I think back to the ditch on the other side of the road where we're just exploiting the environment with no eye to the future. And I'm not a big environmentalist, okay, but one of the reasons why the environmentalist movement took root so much is because of the blatant misuse of our country, which had great effects. Listen, it's not okay that in the 70s the Cuyahoga River caught on fire, right? Somebody was being super careless and exploiting things that they had no business doing. And Los Angeles had some of this, and some of these countries over in Asia with the smog that literally just settles over their cities, for years at a time. It's outrageous, and it's not right. Someone needs to, I hesitate to encourage the government to get involved in these things because government typically doesn't make anything better, okay? But we need to take responsibility for the choices that we're making and be more careful about those things, all right? So, excellent thought. Scenario 4. And who wants to talk about scenario 4? All right, we have 2 groups who haven't talked about it. So, Grace, you go first, and then we'll have some of the gentlemen in the front also share with us. Go ahead.
Well, we thought that it was Philippians, so
Okay.
I don't know if that was right after it's just said, but we thought it was just in Philippians when just talking about going against the law, and I just felt like he was trying to get vainglory, like it says in verse 3, let nothing be done through strife or vainglory, just trying to get more fish somebody already had, and definitely strife. He's causing problems. And honestly, kind of like what my grandpa said, just like, would you really do that if God was with you? And it says, be, like, have this let this mind be in you. So, that's what I thought it was.
All right, very good. I think that's excellent. And that is, there are the fishing rules are in place for a reason, right? Because if you overfish or overhunt a place, well, then it's no good, and you damage some of the ecosystem there. And so there are rules in place, and if you take all the fish, then there's no fish for anybody else, right? That's certainly not looking on the things of others. And so, excellent point. Gentleman in the front, what thoughts did you have, David?
Romans 13 talks about how we're supposed to be subject unto the higher powers and to obey rulers because they are administered to God for good and not for evil.
Very good. And I think that, from Romans 13, fishing and hunting quotas are put in place by people seeking to manage the resources for everyone's good. That's why we have that, right? Camden has skipped school all week because he's out hunting because it's shotgun season.
Way to go, Camden.
And shotgun season is not all the time, because if you shoot all the deer, then you can't have more deer, right? And if you catch all the fish, then you can't have more fish. And so, somebody had to set up some rules, right? And generally, on public property, that's going to be, and the government's that's going to set that up, okay? And certainly, a follower of Jesus Christ should not be involved in stealing. And we have to recognize the government's right to do that. And so certainly it's selfish. If you kill all the deer and catch all the fish, then there won't be anything for other people to enjoy. And so that's good. And again, when you get in the ditch on this side of the road, where you're exploiting and neglecting the creation, then you're no longer subduing the earth the way that God instructed you to. Okay? And I think mankind still has some ways to go on this. There's more that we can learn. And I watched, actually John Dukas sent me a fascinating video years ago about the wolves at Yellowstone. And at one point they got rid of the wolves in Yellowstone because they thought they were damaging the ecosystem. But when they did, the whole Yellowstone ecosystem fell apart because God designed them to be there. Yeah. And there's, we have to figure these things out as best we can, but we do need to leave things up to the Lord as best we can. And we need to honor God. We need to honor others by managing the resources He has given us, not just to benefit ourselves, but those who are yet to be born. Okay? And I'm an ardent capitalist. And I believe in free enterprise. And I believe in Adam Smith's invisible hand. I think it's all wonderful. All right? But that is not a biblical concept. Okay? I think it's the best concept that's ever been invented in terms of managing resources. But be careful. Selfish people can use any form of government to benefit only themselves while leaving others behind. And so there is a ditch on that side, okay? But let's get back a little bit to climate change. I appreciate the feedback and the work on that, and we did very well. And so many people are concerned with global warming. Remember global warming? We used to talk about global warming all the time. Well, we stopped, and now we talk about climate change instead. And there's been a lot of hype about sea levels rising. You ever heard about that? New York City's going to be underwater soon. There's a lot of hype about polar bears dying off. But any situation like this, the ozone layer disappearing, things like that, we have to look at these ideas through what kind of glasses? Biblical glasses. All right? Always through a biblical lens, never through our own ideas, never through secular ideas, never through the lens of environmentalists or evolutionists. Okay? So, Genesis chapter 8 and verse 20. Turn with me there if you would. Genesis chapter 8 and verse 20. I'm going to read several verses here. And, we might not finish tonight. This is bad. Oh, well, that's all right. We're good. Genesis chapter 8, look at verse 20 with me. It says, and Noah built an altar unto the Lord. Okay, what event just took place? The flood. And took of every clean beast and of every clean fowl and offered burnt offerings on the altar. And the Lord smelled a sweet savor, and the Lord said in his heart, I will not again curse the ground any more for man's sake. For the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I again smite any more every living thing as I have done. While the earth remaineth, seed time and harvest, and cold and heat, and summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease. And God blessed Noah and his sons, and said unto them, be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth, And the fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth, and upon every fowl of the air, upon all that moveth upon the earth, and upon all the fishes of the sea. Into your hand are they delivered. Every moving thing that liveth shall be meat for you, even as the green herb have I given you all things. So, what is the time frame that we're looking at in this passage? If you remember back from our dating times, what's the time frame we're looking at? Okay, just after the flood, which is about how long after the creation of the world? Does anybody remember?
2000.
1500, 1200, 1300.
1700, right around 1700. You guys were right on it, okay? And so who's speaking in this passage? In this passage, right? That's right. It's God is speaking to Noah and his family. Now look at some of the promises that God made. You see some promises here? Who can name for me a promise that God made? Mom?
He would never flood the earth again?
Okay, he doesn't specifically say it in this area, okay? But he does talking about he's not going to curse the ground, for instance. Cindy, what do you see?
That's what I was just going to say.
Okay. Yeah, he says, I will not again curse the ground anymore for man's sake. Okay? Very good. Somebody else, what's another promise that you see here?
Neither will I again smite any more every living thing as I have done.
So what does that mean? He's not going to smite again, as he says, everything living. What do you think that means there?
It alludes to the flood, I think, but it could be other ways of smiting every living thing, maybe.
I mean, he just came out of the flood where he wiped out everything on the earth. Right? Almost. He says, I'm not going to do that again. Not in this way. Okay? He says, I'm not going to do it as I have done. So that does get back to sort of, somewhat referencing, and a little later, he very specifically in verse 11, chapter 9, neither shall there any more be a flood to destroy the earth. Okay? So he's saying, I'm not going to do that again, what I just did. What's another promise that he makes? Yeah, times and seasons. I mean, he sort of says the cycles of nature will continue, and he specifically mentions, seed time and harvest. He mentions cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night. Okay? Now, several times, many times, when God makes a promise in the Bible, it's conditional. Right? If my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face, turn from their wicked ways, then I'll do this. Okay? That's conditional. Right? If you clean your room, I will take you for ice cream. That's a conditional promise. Okay? But is this a conditional promise? Look at it. Is this conditional? Are there any conditions?
No.
No. He just says, you know what? Mankind's super wicked, but I won't do that again. And seasons, cold, heat, summer, and winter will continue. Okay? Then there's a command that is repeated from earlier in Genesis where he says, Noah and his family are to multiply and fill the earth. And they're once again telling them that the animals are delivered into their hands, sort of under their control. Dominion, once again, is listed there. And there's a lot of attributes that are represented in this passage. I mean, there's mercy. His sovereignty and omniscience are shown. His control over the future. He says, this is what will happen. His faithfulness is shown in that he's making a promise that that was a long time ago, right? 4,000 years ago. Has he failed in that promise? Not at all. Okay? And so there are many attributes of God. And so as we think about this in relation to environmentalism, as we look at it in relation to climate change, listen, no matter what the media says, no matter what scientists say about the future of the earth and about the climate, we can cling to this promise from God. The seasons and cycles of this earth will continue as God sustains them. Okay? God said he's going to sustain them. They're going to continue, so we don't have to worry about it. Hebrews, the very beginning, talks about how Jesus is upholding all things by the word of his power. Another passage in Colossians talks about by him all things consist. Okay? He's holding it all together. God is omnipotent, so he can sustain the cycles of cold and heat, day and night, winter and summer. God can do that. Throughout Scripture, we see God making promises to people, and every promise comes to pass. He has been sustaining the earth through all its various cycles since its creation, and we have 6,000 years of promises to draw hope from, to rely on, to rest on. And he has yet to break a single promise. Not once has he. And so when you see these claims, and you see these ideas that, the earth is falling apart, and sea levels are rising, and the ozone is getting, the gap is getting so big, we're all going to die. Listen, we don't have to be concerned about those things. Many of those things, almost all of those claims are made based on evolutionary thinking. That the earth is billions of years old. We don't have to look to that. We can look to Scripture. And certainly there are some indications that the earth's temperature has been changing over the last several hundred years. But prior to that, there's also a lot of evidence that there was an extremely cold period in Earth's history. And so we live in a world that's impacted by the consequences of the fall, the consequences of sin that came. So of course we have catastrophes, right? We have hurricanes and typhoons and earthquakes, and we have tornadoes, and we have floods and all sorts of natural disasters. Climates change, the cycles continue, but God is faithful to His promises. Okay, now we're going to look at it, if we have time, that there was somewhat of an ice age. You know, we talk about Ice Age, the great movie series based on the Ice Age. There likely was somewhat of an ice age that followed the flood, a very cold period, but the earth has been warming somewhat since then. Okay, and we don't know exactly how all these things work with greenhouse gases, solar cycles. You know, people get so concerned about global warming. Well, there's that really big hot thing 93 million miles away that probably has a big effect on how warm the earth is, okay? And I know, you know, cow emissions and hairspray are a big deal, but I think the sun is a big deal as well. And listen, if we seek to manage the resources that God has given us in a balanced way, listen, we have no reason to think that we will throw the earth system out of balance. And ultimately, it's God who promised these cycles would continue, and we can trust that they will until He brings about the end of the world. Okay? Will the end of the world happen? Yes, but it will not be because of man. It will be because of God. And you want to talk about global warming? Wow. The Apostle Peter talks about that, doesn't he? Look at 2 Peter real quick. We'll be done. 2 Peter chapter 3. And is global warming real? It absolutely is real. 2 Peter has a major prediction here that he's going to make. 2 Peter 3, 1 through 10. We won't read the whole thing. And it gets very, very real in this. And as he talks about this. And he talks about the old days, okay? And how that will happen. But then look at verse 10. But the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in the which the heavens shall pass away with a great noise, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat, the earth also and the works that are therein shall be burned up. Okay? That's global warming. All right? And it is going to happen, but it's not caused by man. It's caused by God. And listen, we should warn others about this coming judgment. Right? The end is near.
Yes.
And we need to point them to the mercy that God gave toward our sinful race through what Christ accomplished on the cross. Okay? And it's a wonderful thing. We're going to stop there. We still didn't finish this. We will finish it next week. Really? And so, but I just want to encourage you and challenge you. And God has made some very specific promises. Rest on His promise. Don't worry about the doomsdayers and the naysayers, okay, when it comes to environmentalism. And rest on the promises of God. Yes, Cindy?
Yes, about the Lord's promises to us, the one that really sticks to my heart is His promise that He would never flood the earth the way we did.
Yes.
Anymore. So every time we see the rainbow in the sky, that's His promise to us.
Amen. Amen. That is a great promise there. And I'm thankful to that. All right, so we'll do a little application next week. I have some interesting thoughts that I want to get to in regards to some positive news about climate change that I think will be helpful to you next week. And so we'll get to that, and then we're going to talk, well, all from there, okay? And so thanks for being here tonight. Let's go ahead and close in a word of prayer. Lord, thank you so much for your word. Thank you for the truth and the power that we find therein. And thank you for your promises, Lord. I'm so thankful tonight that we can absolutely rest in the fact that, Lord, you're the one who designed and created this world, and you are sustaining it. The days, the nights, the summer, the winter, the seasons, the seed time and harvest, Lord. I'm thankful that you set that up. You're sustaining it every step of the way. Thank you for what you can do. I pray that you help us this evening. In your name we pray. Amen.